To anyone I've offended, I just want to say, I reinvented electric cars and I'm sending people to Mars on rocket ships. Did you think I was going to be a chill, normal dude? Now, I just finished reading the Elon Musk biography, or autobiography actually, by Walter Isaacson. And it was a fascinating read. I learned so much about Elon Musk, his mindset, how he operates, and how he does things. That quote that I started with was actually an Elon Musk quote, if you hadn't picked it up yet. And today, what I wanted to do is discuss the 3 takeaways I got from the book. Now, how did I read the book? I listened to the audio. It took me about 3 days to finish, but I was very into it. Basically, anytime I got in the car, I was listening to it. Anytime I had spare time, I was listening to it. Anytime I was on a walk, I was listening to it. And how did I finish it in 3 days? Well, I listened to it on 2.5x speed, so it allowed me to speed things up. And if you wanted to learn how I listen on 3.5x or 2.5x or 3x speed and get a big, thick book finished in 2 or 3 days, then go check out that other video I recorded and you'll learn how you can listen on multiple times speed. Now, what I want to get into is the 3 lessons I've learned from the book, kind of the takeaways, the rhythm of how Elon Musk operates. Sometimes when I'm listening to a book like this, I'm not looking for very specific takeaways, like I'm not taking notes. For example, a specific takeaway from the book, which I actually did take away, which I thought was interesting, was the author talks about to make money, to make a lot of money, basically what you do is you combine 2 past innovations with a new trend. So for example, when Elon Musk started Zip2, right, he combined the Yellow Pages with mapping software. Those were the 2 innovations, and combined it with the new trend. The new trend was the internet. So he took maps, he took the Yellow Pages and combined the 2 innovations with the trend, which was the internet. So that's not a specific takeaway I wanted to go through today. The 3 takeaways I wanted to go through are just like big picture lessons that were repeated throughout the book multiple times. I was like, that's interesting. This is how Elon Musk operates. And these are great things to learn. So the first thing, which was fascinating, and I don't know if anyone else would have the same takeaway if they were listening to this book or reading the book, but essentially the first takeaway looks like this. Number 1 is reduce. You could also think of this as simplify. Simplify. Now, why do I say this? Why was this a lesson or a takeaway? Essentially, throughout the book multiple times, what you hear is anytime Elon's in a situation when it comes to design and building things out, he's constantly questioning, how can we make this more simple? How can we reduce the elements of this, right? So there's tons of examples where he's building Teslas, for example, and there's a big fancy dash and this and that dashboard, and Elon's like, this is rubbish, like let's get rid of it, let's just make it more simple. Or another example is on the door handles of the car, right? You know, they had designed them like traditional door handles. If you can visualize a Tesla, you usually walk up to the car and they pop out. They're like flush built into the car. Or you press them and they pop out, right? So they're built in. That's an example of Elon forcing his team to reduce and simplify. And multiple times his team pushed back. They're like, we don't want to do these door handles like this. It's too much time. It's too much money. It's too hard to build out. But he really pushed his team and he's like, we're going to make it simple. But the biggest example I wanted to give you when it comes to reducing and simplify, which kind of blew my mind, you know, when I'm reading a book like this, usually there's like a few standout things. And something that was a standout to me when it comes to reducing is when Elon was working on X.com, which merged with PayPal. And what they did, or what Elon did, is he looked at traditional banks, and to sign up to a traditional bank, you know, you had to fill out a crazy amount of forms, and you know, you went through different screens. You had to put in your this and that, and your ID and your social security number, and you know, all these different elements. And what he wanted to do is see, how can we make the simplest process from A to B, right? For someone to sign up to PayPal or X.com. How can we make it as quick as possible? And so one of his innovations, which I don't know if he actually invented this or if it was around before, but it's something that he implemented at PayPal. And that was instead of having a username, he realized the email address could become the username. And that way, what that allowed them to do is cut out another piece of line on the form, right? So very, very interesting. He's big on reducing and simplifying. Now, the second biggest takeaway I got from the book, I'm just checking my notes here, so I can give you accurate information, but the second bit of information or takeaway is question everything. So why was this such a takeaway? Question everything. Now, this was a takeaway because throughout the book, there were many instances where essentially his team had designed something in one way, or they built something out in a specific way, or whatever it was. And Elon said, well, why aren't we doing it like this? And the team were like, well, that can't be done. And he's like, well, have we tried? Can we test it? And so multiple times, and why this was such a takeaway is because it seemed to be a theme of the book where basically he bended reality to his will. And he did this by questioning everything. So whenever he was told something couldn't be done, he pushed back on it and he's like, make it work. Go show me it working. Go get this working. Whenever he questioned a design and the team were like, well, this is how we're doing it because X, Y, Z. He's like, well, can we do it this way? And again, the team would push back, and usually it sounds like most of the times whenever he would make these suggestions, the team would end up, his ideas were actually working. So an example of questioning everything, which aligns with simplifying, is when they are, if you know Elon and his history and the different companies he owns, he's got a company called SpaceX that sends rockets into space. You might have heard of that, pretty cool company. But with underneath SpaceX, he's got a company called Starlink. And Starlink essentially, they shoot low orbit satellites up into the atmosphere that circle around the Earth. And they're able to provide internet to the world. People can connect to a Starlink satellite and get internet, right? So pretty cool concept. And while they were building it out, there was a lot of two components. I don't know the specific components. One was like an antenna, one was like the motherboard, whatever it was. I don't know the specifics. But essentially, Elon's like, well, why do we have them in two different locations? Why can't we combine them into one, right? Which goes back to this reduce/simplify process. But the team were like, well, we can't do it because this and that, and this is the reason, and this is how it was designed, and the engineers, this and that. And Elon said, well, can it be done? And they said, well, maybe, but it's not how we've designed it. And he's like, well, redesign it. It's going to cost us less money to get it up into space and to operate these satellites. And in the end, through questioning everything, oftentimes Elon would be right about what he was questioning. Sometimes he wasn't though, but a lot of times he was. And the third concept I want to kind of touch on here, which you probably know this already if you've been following Elon Musk at all, if you know anything about him. And that is being driven by mission, right? Driven by mission. Driven by mission. So if you think about Elon Musk and the projects he works on, they're all very much mission-based, right? They're all around saving the planet and saving the human race. So for example, Tesla is about not relying on, traditional oil and gas, right? And so what the mission is there is to kind of save the environment, right? Turn cars into electric, stop using up some of the planet's natural resources, right? SpaceX, oh no, are we still recording? We kind of have gone into a weird mode here. There we go, we're back. SpaceX is about, sorry about that. I don't even think I'm going to edit that one out, so thank you for sticking with me. But SpaceX is about saving the human race, right? And being able to be interplanetary, move humans from Earth to Mars, right? So it's this big mission. And what that allows him to do is it allows him to be super focused and work to tight deadlines. He really pushes his team to get things done quickly. But by having this mission and understanding what he wants to do, he's able to make decisions, right? So having the mission allows him to make decisions. So I'll give you an example of this. A good example of having the mission is when they were designing cars, right? They wanted to be full self-driving vehicles. And the team, so he had the idea, let's remove the gas pedal, let's remove the brakes, let's remove the steering wheel, right? Let's remove the mirrors on the car. And the reason for that is he wanted it to be full self-driving. He didn't want to have any like hybrid where there could be a driver of the vehicle. And of course, his team pushed back on that. They said it breaches regulations, etc. And he's like, well, this is the mission. This is what we're going for. This is how we're going to do it. Now, in the end, in that particular scenario, the team actually convinced Elon to build it out with a steering wheel and all the other features. But just through that example, you can see how it allows Elon to make decisions. But one particular example I want to give you around being driven by mission is Elon believes one of the biggest challenges humanity and this earth is facing is a shrinking population, right? He says people aren't having enough kids, especially intelligent people. So I don't know how many kids he's got. They mention it throughout the book, but he probably has like 7 or 8, maybe even 9 kids, right? So he's got a lot of kids with multiple different mothers as well. One of them is quite famous, Grimes. She's an artist. Others have been models and things like that. He's dated Amber Heard, which is a bit controversial. But what happens is he had an employee from one of his companies who hadn't had kids, and she was getting older, right? And I don't think she was in a relationship. I don't know the full story. They don't really touch on it in the book. But he's so driven by populating humanity and saving humanity that he's had all these kids to help populate the earth, especially by smart people. But he decided he was going to donate sperm, and that's what he did. He donated sperm for this employee of his. So this employee of his is actually had a child with him. They did it through IVF or whatever procedure they used. But pretty interesting there. It just shows his mission and how he's driven by mission. So to summarize, this new Elon Musk book by Walter Isaacson was a fascinating read. I really had trouble putting it down. I've been thinking about it a lot since finishing, and I highly, highly recommend it. If you get the opportunity to read that book, I would really recommend it. It's very inspiring, very motivating, but more so than that, you get to see how one of the smartest people on this planet thinks. You get to see how one of the biggest change makers in this world thinks and acts, right, and behaves. And of course, Elon Musk as well is currently the richest person in the world, according to Forbes, So another great reason to learn from the best, right? Using the straight to the top framework, right? Good artists copy, great artists steal. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be able to steal from Elon Musk. That's a Pablo Picasso quote. But you can definitely adopt some of his mindsets, some of his frameworks as well. So really recommend, get your hands on the book Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson. And I'll see you on the next episode. Hit subscribe. We got some exciting content coming your way.